Now let's start off in the Federal Capital Territory, where there were indications on Thursday that some names on the presidential pardon list approved by the Council of State, as presented by the Attorney General of the Federation, Lateef Fagbemi-San, may be dropped. The development comes amid growing public outcry over the inclusion of certain high-profile and violent offenders among those pardoned by President Bola Tinubu. The Office of the Attorney General and Minister of Justice on Thursday issued a press release that the list is still under review. The presidential pardon, usually granted to mark national occasions, was also meant to decongest prisons and promote reconciliation. The presidential statement noted that the decision followed recommendations by the Presidential Advisory Committee on the prerogative of mercy, chaired by the Attorney General. Let's go to the National Assembly, where the Senate has stepped down the second reading of a bill seeking to repeal the Electoral Act 2022 and enact a new Electoral Bill 2025 after a heated debate on the floor of the Red Chamber. The bill, sponsored by the chairman of a Senate Committee on Electoral Matters, Senator Simon Lalong, seeks to strengthen Nigeria's electoral system through greater transparency, voter participation, and accountability. Senator Lalong, while leading the debate on the bill's basic principles, says the 2023 general election exposed several gaps, including weak enforcement of laws, conflicting results, and poor transparency, stressing that the proposed legislation aims to restore public trust, mandate continuous voter registration, and introduce digital voter identification systems.
Objectives of the proposed legislation, Mr. President, are to bring about improvement in the electoral process by ensuring transparency, efficiency, and integrity of the electoral system.
On Monday, the public hearing was held, and this bill has been listed for second reading, I think last week. It wasn't taken. Because we want to complete this work in good time, we have abridged the process.
Senator Lalong, you have not touched the nitty-gritty of the reason why you want us to pass this for second reading. Yes, you are supposed to talk about general principles. General principles will be okay. But what have you been able to tell us?
Moving away from that now, youths in Nigeria, alongside key stakeholders from the public sector and civil society organizations, have converged on Abuja for a summit focused on advancing the Sustainable Development Goals. The gathering seeks to identify solutions in key areas such as health, democracy and governance, employment and entrepreneurship, as well as education. We're now joined by my colleague, our correspondent, Joshua Imurai, who's live at the summit as we speak. Joshua, what more can you tell us from where you are? What has been the discussions at the summit? All right, apologies for that. We'll bring back Joshua Imurai once we're able to establish a stable connection with him. In the meantime, a group of aggrieved business owners whose business structures were demolished earlier in the week are calling on the attention of relevant authorities in a bid to seek redress and justice. The demolition is part of grand demolition exercises being carried out by the Federal Capital Development Authority in parts of the FCT, which they claim will allow for the construction of other structures, as the area has now been reallocated to other companies. The business owners are crying foul, saying that the exercises were carried out in breach of laid down laws and their plots and gardens reallocated to cronies of FCTA officials without due process. They also maintain that they have not defaulted in any of their payments and necessary rents and do not understand why their plots and gardens should be reallocated. News Central's Aisha Saliu is live at the location of the demolished structures and brings us up to date regarding the people and their bereavement. Aisha, thank you for joining us. What is the update? I mean, we saw the video that made the rounds of these people aggrieved and saying that they have done nothing, for the structures to be demolished. What is the update on that?
I'm standing right in the premises of what seems to be the remains of the now demolished park, a green area that has been a business that has been in existence for over a decade, a business that was instituted by a group of young women who have, invested heavily in this particular area. If you can see by my right, this is what remains of the structure, a structure that has served a lot of people in this area, providing, recreational activities amongst others. And since morning, the women here, they have been talking and speaking to the press. Earlier, we had a press conference where they stated their demands, asking the government why this has happened. And also, it will suffice to know that before this particular demolition, they had initially, sometime in April, renewed their ground rent, although they were served a revocation of the use of this land sometime in June or July thereabout. But then they're saying that there was no proper procedure put in place. And even before the demolition took place, they just notified them, just 1 day notification, and asking them to vacate immediately. And just a couple of days after, they came in with their bulldozers and they bulldozed this particular structure. And this is what is left here. They have also lamented that this particular structure has created businesses, has created source of livelihoods for many people, over 50 employers that they have had here for over a decade. But I'll walk right now to one of the mothers of one of the investors, so that she can also bring us up to date on what this means to her and her daughter, who has invested heavily in this area. Good morning.
Thank you, my dear.
Yes, your name and what you do?
I am Mrs. Aliu.
Okay.
Halima's mother.
Okay, kindly bring us up to speed. Your daughter is one of the investors in this particular now demolished structure.
Yes.
What does this mean to you?
It means a lot, because this is where I earn a living. As you can see, if I'm supposed to be a government worker, I would have been retired long ago. And I was just like 30 years when I lost my husband. Over 20 years, I am a widow since 24 years now. And then this little girl was just a small girl. I know how I suffered to pay school fees before she graduated from school. I sell pepper, I sell tomato, I sell akamo. You know, I am not a widow that go about sleeping with men. I trade to bring up the children. And by the grace of God, God helped me. After she graduates, she joined her friends here. And from here, she paid her younger one school fees. From here, she brings food to the house. Now, since 4 days ago, I don't know what they call food, because I don't have an appetite to eat. The means of my feeding, or the welfare of my house has been forcefully collected.
Okay.
You know, the means of my livelihood, where to eat or to take care of my home, has been forcefully collected from the people we call leaders of this nation.
Okay. Thank you so much. Well, Blessings, you have heard from one of the aggrieved mothers of the aggrieved parties. I'll walk over to Esther in this so that she can bring us up to speed on what the consequences of this demolition has been, and also their demands.
Well, it's such a sad one, because we have put in almost everything, and just when we're settling and hoping to get some proceeds or reprieve, and this is where we are. The consequence here is telling. We have in our direct employment, we have 68 young graduates, young men and women, you know, have been put out of jobs. The young lady who was running the breakfast session, you know, she's at the hospital right now because she came in from the gym and saw the demolition going on. She fainted here. She collapsed here, right here. We rushed her to the hospital. The day they came here, there was a school on excursion here. They brought children here. We have a paint and sip. It's quite notable. As a matter of fact, we were celebrated on Al Jazeera in 2016, you know. So all of that, the young people were traumatized, seeing policemen and thugs. They came in here, the day they came here, with over 50 thugs and bearing arms and clubs, and chased everyone out here. Those children are still traumatized as we speak, you know. So we have lost monies, We have lost in unquantifiable sums right now. I have not had sleep in the last 72 hours, you know. And it's a shame because we are suffering all of this in spite of a court order, in spite of a court proceeding, all right? So, and our demands are simple because we are lawful people. We're not criminals, all right? Our demands are simple. If there is a court order, all right, there is a court proceeding, it should be respected, all right? Nigeria is a country of laws. We expect that the rule of law should be respected, all right? And if they have no evidence whatsoever that we have flouted rules, it's just a callous move just to grab land, that's all. And if you wish to take this place from us, you should sit down and negotiate, all right? Tell us what your offer, we are in business here. If you want to take our place from us, you sit down, recognizing the fact that we have invested monies and time into this place, then tell us what we will give you our price. We'll name our price to you. And if you meet that, we are law-abiding citizens. We go our way and everybody goes away peacefully. That's all.
Thank you so much. Well, blessings, you invested in this now demolished business structure, and she has stated that perhaps if the government had met with them, they would have resolved this amicably, but then they are now stating some demands and also asking for justice from the government.
All right, Aisha, thank you for that. It's really a sad one. And a lot of speculators would also agree with her proposition there that they could have basically just negotiated as opposed to demolishing these structures and putting a lot of people out of work. But thank you so much, Aisha, for the update. We go on a break now, and when we come back, bandits kill at least 8 security operatives in Zamfara State. More stories, stay tuned. All right, many thanks for staying with us. Youths in Nigeria, alongside key stakeholders from the public sector and civil society organizations, have converged on Abuja, as we earlier mentioned, for a summit focused on advancing the sustainable development goals. And right now, my colleague Joshua Murai is currently live at the summit to give us more update. Joshua, what more can you tell us from the summit? What has been the most crucial part of the conversation so far?
Good afternoon to you, Blessings. Most of the conversation is gravitated towards owning the shift, particularly for young Nigerians on power, platforms and policy of being young in Africa. And one of the ways that the youth are being advised to pursue owning the shift in Africa is through advocacy and through interaction. One of them is accountability, holding those in power accountable. And they are saying that Nigerians, particularly Africans and young Nigerians, they need to move from holding just the top, those big positions accountable, that they should go beyond the top to the grassroots. And the idea is that they should engage more of those who are leaders, councillors, local government chairmen, and the likes of them. Another issue raised is the apathetic nature of which young Nigerians are becoming apathetic towards the political process in terms of election, and there is concerns of how the elections and others are being seen as violent in nature. And what they are saying is that beyond that, Nigerians should come out, and the only way that their voice can be heard or recognized is through elections and the like. So, blessings.
Thank you so much for being here.
All right, Joshua, thank you for the update. I would also like to find out, I mean, what are the expectations of the attendees at this summit? What are we hoping? Because, I mean, it's easy to have a gathering such as this one and have pivotal conversations like what you mentioned, but what are the expectations of the attendees going forward after the summit?
Well, as you know, some of the public leaders and those in government are being represented here in this gathering. And of course, most of the conversation involve those who are playing one role or the other in government. And it is expected at the end of the day, the consensus and those agreeable points will be taken back to the government for implementation. Of course, they are representative of state governments, local governments, even those in the National Assembly. And there is an expectation that most of these things discussed will be discussed on a larger scale to ensure that these are included in the policies and plans of the government.
Dr. Marai, thank you so much for the update on the summit currently ongoing on African youth in politics. Let's take a detour now to security matters. At least 8 security operatives, including 5 police officers and 3 vigilantes, have been killed in a fresh ambush by bandits in Zamfara State. The attack occurred on Thursday evening along the Gusau-Funtua Road in Safe local government area when armed men opened fire on a patrol team near Gidangiye village, just a few kilometers from Safe town. Eyewitnesses say the assailants appeared to have prior knowledge of the patrol movement and escaped into the forest on motorcycles after the assault. Governor Daudu Lawal, who confirmed the incident, condemned the attack and described it as another reminder of the urgent need to restore security in that region. The remains of the victims have been deposited at the Federal Medical Center in Gusau. Still in security, the Defense Headquarters says that it has arrested notorious and wanted IPOB ESN commander, popularly called Gentle the Yahoo. Gentle has been on the wanted list of the military and also the police for a sting of attacks on innocent citizens in the southeast, and was recently linked to the murder of 3 youths suspected to be fighters for his network who were murdered in cold blood, and the video circulated on social media. The Director of Defense Media Information, Major General Marcus Kange, spoke to newsmen while giving an update on military operations across the country, saying that Gentle was arrested with several other criminal suspects in Imo State.
Groups of Operation Udoka sustained offensive posture throughout the week under review. Between 8th to 13th October, they conducted offensive operations and arrested a suspected IPOB ESN terrorist commander identified as Gentle, who was on troops wanted list along 8 other criminals in Owerri West and Maitoli local government areas of Imo State, as well as Izi and Abochukwu local government area of Imo State. So weapons, ammunition, and vehicles were also recovered from them.
French Minister Jean-Noël Barrot, during his visit to Nigeria, meets with Nigerian Foreign Minister Yusuf Tugar to discuss on how to deepen bilateral relations and discuss also on regional concerns, including Madagascar's unrest. Barrot emphasized the importance of listening to Madagascar's youth to foster a peaceful and lasting solution. The meeting highlighted France's commitment to collaborating with African nations on security, governance, and economic growth. Both ministers also explored expanding strategic cooperation amidst ongoing regional challenges.
We stand ready to support Nigerian authorities in their efforts to rein the threat of terrorist groups. It's up to Nigerian authorities to let us know how we can contribute through training or equipment, because they're best positioned to tell us what they need. But from where we stand.
La mobilisation de la jeunesse de Madagascar doit être pleinement entendue pour que se construise une solution durable, pacifique et apaisée. Nous réaffirmons notre appel à ce que les principes démocratiques, les libertés fondamentales, l'état de droit, la transparence institutionnelle et la sécurité des individus soient garantis. La France appelle donc l'ensemble des parties prenantes à faire preuve de responsabilité, car le dialogue doit primer. Nous tenons disponibles aux côtés de nos partenaires et notamment des organisations régionales pour parvenir à une solution conforme aux attentes du peuple malgache.
Away from that, in a renewed call for inclusion, the Small Scale Women Farmers Organization in Nigeria has presented a charter of demands to the Federal Capital Territory Administration. This was during a forum in Abuja where they called for stronger government support to boost agricultural productivity and food security. Our correspondent, Blessing Akibe, compiled this report.
Smallholder women farmers in Nigeria play a vital role in feeding the nation, but many continue to struggle with limited access to land, farm inputs, credit facilities, and markets. They say challenges ranging from insecurity, limited land ownership due to gender discrimination, and inadequate access to farm inputs have enabled them to reach their full potential.
As a woman farmer, we are challenged with issue of land. Land is a great factor in the production of crop. And for you to do agriculture very well, you need to have access and control of land. So this is one principle that we really need to work on, to see that every woman have a land and land resources. So
insecurity has eaten us deep, and it has taken a lot from us as farmers. So my colleague was just telling me just this afternoon how she farmed and invested so much in cassava farm, and at the tail end, when she's about to harvest, she lost all to theft and herders that encroached the farm. So this is what we are saying. So she has lost her capital, she has lost her resources.
Stakeholders say efforts are being made to give women farmers greater opportunities to boost their productivity.
Government should do something more about making land available for women, because from the discussion we had today, we have realized that women are really eager to go into farming. But then most of them complain of the fact that they don't even have land available for them to do this.
Commitment should be made by government to secure especially agricultural land. If we have agro rangers, we have people that are protecting farms. It's not something that should be difficult for government to do.
The government should remember, while budgeting for us, you should get us involved in the budget process so that they will know what we need and when we need it.
They are also calling on the government for increased investment, equitable access to land and inputs, and provide gender-responsive agricultural policies to strengthen food security.
Let's turn our focus now to Cameroon, where tension continues to build following the country's presidential election. Opposition groups, civic leaders, and members of the international community are calling on authorities to uphold the integrity of the vote as citizens grow restless over the delayed release of results. Our correspondent, Kathleen Ndongmo, brings us the latest updates from the capital, Yaoundé.
Cameroonians woke up today to growing calls from opposition figures, civil society organizations, and at least one member of parliament, as well as sections of the international community, urging the incumbents to concede defeat and asking that the electoral body, ELECAM, respects what they call the truth of the ballot. Among them, leading opposition candidates and several thought leaders who argue that transparency is key to avoiding unrest in the country. Yet, frustration is deepening. Many citizens are questioning why, in an age of advanced digital technology, the nation must wait up to 2 weeks for the official announcement of election results. The delay, they say, is raising old fears of manipulation, reminiscent of the disputed 1992 and 2018 presidential polls. Across key cities, including Douala, Chang, Yaoundé, and Garoua, security forces remain heavily deployed. The government insists that the increased presence of troops is to maintain law and order. But citizens say it sends a message of intimidation to people who are simply trying to defend their votes and their rights. In Douala, a senior administrative officer even issued a directive prohibiting public gatherings. Yesterday, hundreds of supporters gathered outside the residence of opposition challenger Issa Chiroma Bakari, saying that they are protecting him against alleged plans for his arrest. His party also says the government is attempting to silence dissent. Meanwhile, ELECAM has released a resolution. The resolution establishes the National Commission for the General Counting of Votes, which includes representatives of presidential candidates, the judiciary, and administration. But citizen-led platforms continue to publish collated results from polling stations, presenting their own evidence from observers and voters who stayed through the night of the polls. So far, at least 11 petitions have been filed before the Constitutional Council contesting the election process. However, Legal experts argue that under Cameroonian law, the council can only annul or uphold an election, not declare a winner. They describe the country's electoral process as deliberately opaque, saying that the institution merely proclaims results transmitted by the National Counting Commission. In some areas of the country, pro-government troops have commended the military for quelling anti-fraud demonstrations, particularly in towns like Douala and Chang. Yet, others warn that suppressing dissent could instead inflame tensions. Political scientists have cautioned that Cameroon risks repeating the mistakes of 2018 if grievances are ignored. The stakes here are dire. Should the final results be widely perceived as manipulated, the socio-economic and political ramifications could be quite severe. Politically, it risks deepening the crisis of legitimacy for the government and eroding public trust in democratic institutions. Socio-economically, it could trigger widespread protests, further civil unrest, potentially escalating existing conflicts, and a consequent chilling effect on investment and the already strained national economy. As the country waits for results expected next week, uncertainty here continues. Many now say that how the government handles the coming days could determine whether Cameroon moves towards reconciliation and better governance or deeper instability.
Now, in Zimbabwe, calls to oust President Emmerson Mnangagwa are growing louder, with plans for a 1 million march expected to take place in Harare on Friday, which is today. Reports indicate that Zimbabweans have been urged to take to the streets by war. Veteran Blessed Geza, who is reportedly aligned with Vice President General Constantino Chiwenga. Meanwhile, as of this morning, police have been deployed at strategic locations across Harare ahead of the planned demonstrations. Now, joining us to unpack this is the General Secretary, Zimbabwe Communist Party, Kabuto Mabena. He joins from Johannesburg, South Africa. Thank you so much for joining us. I'll start by asking, what are the main reasons that are driving Zimbabweans to organize these demonstrations against President Mnangagwa?
Yeah, thank you so much, and greetings to your viewers. Firstly, the issue is that Blessed Geza is a member of ZANU-PF, though we understand has been expelled. It's a factional war inside the ZANU-PF, as we saw in 2017. When Mnangagwa was fired from ZANU-PF in 2017, he was vice president then. They mobilized even outside the ZANU-PF because they understood the grievances of the generality of Zimbabweans, and then they brought the army into the streets, which rolled the tanks. This was supported by the working class in Zimbabwe because there was a belief that once Mugabe was gone, Zimbabwe was going to have a government of national unity, which was going to bring on board all parties represented in parliament and civil society to rebuild the economy. After that lesson, because that did not happen, so when the factionalism again rears its ugly head inside the ZANU-PF, this time the face of it being Blessed Geza, who is seen to be with the Vice President Chiwenga. On the 31st of March, people stayed away because they thought that the military was going to move in, there was going to be violence, but later on that did not happen. So this one, which is organized by Geza, it's a factional war inside the ZANU-PF. But outside that, because of poverty, because of high unemployment, because of political instability, people want the ZANU-PF gone. The disputed election outcome all contributed to Zimbabweans wanting ZANU-PF gone. So this is why even some who are not ZANU-PF members, when a person like a Blessed Geza, a war veteran, a member of ZANU-PF, calls for these stairways or these demonstrations, they get persuaded because the opposition, we in the opposition, we are not united. The opposition has been splitting ever since Mnangagwa came to power. So this is why then you will see people being sympathetic to another faction inside the ZANU-PF. But the main reason is about poverty, it's about jobs, it's about the economy that is not performing. You have the looting class that is busy buying everyone who cares, who sings their praises. Vehicles, we see that ZANU-PF is entire this week meeting at an annual conference. We are told that 300 members of the Central Committee have been bought in new vehicles by the looting class in Zimbabwe. So we condemn such, and this what angers the generality of Zimbabweans.
So I would also like to find out, what challenges do demonstrators face when it comes to mobilizing and sustaining these protests in the current political climate in Zimbabwe?
What you have is that you have to apply to the police. The police are partisan. So once you announce that there's going to be a demonstration, instead of the police protecting you as the people of Zimbabwe, because their responsibility is to protect life and property, they actually harass you. When you hold a press conference and give notice that there's going to be a demonstration, they actually visit you in the middle of the night. So Zimbabwe, in theory, in terms of the constitution, on paper, it allows demonstrations, but in reality, it does not happen. The police will break up any demonstration.
Okay, also, how do you assess the government's response to the people's grievances? What should be the way forward for Zimbabwe?
They don't care. Zimbabwean government is the most uncaring government in the world. Civil servants, they will be asking for better wages, better working conditions. They are not being granted. There's no increment. It is only now when a demonstration is called by Blessed Geza, and also at a time when Emerson Mnangagwa and his faction inside ZANU-PF want to amend the constitution and push forward the elections beyond 2028, it is then that we are told that the presidential scheme has made available a bonus for all civil servants at $150 each, which is going to be split half in the month of November and the month of December. But the civil servants in Zimbabwe are the lowest paid in the continent. So the ZANU-PF government is not caring. They don't care about the suffering of the people of Zimbabwe.
All right, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your time with us on the news. And we're hoping that there is a positive news from Zimbabwe in no time.
It's mine.
Let's go now to Nairobi, where tragedy has struck during a public funeral procession for former Prime Minister of Kenya, Raila Odinga. At least 3 people have died after police fired gunshots and tear gas into a crowd of mourners gathered at a stadium on Wednesday. It remains unclear whether the police used live ammunition or rubber bullets in the arena. News Central's Bongani Siziba has more.
It was chaotic scenes on the streets of Kenya on Wednesday as the masses gathered to welcome the body of the country's opposition icon, affectionately known as Baba. For those who knew him, the only person who could have calmed the nation in this moment was one lying silent among the crowd. For many, Raila Odinga is described as a towering icon whose life was committed to the pursuit of democracy and change.
Raila Amolo Odinga's name will forever be etched in the story of our republic, a story of struggle, sacrifice, courage, rule of law, hope, and of our pursuit for excellence.
At 80, Odinga spent decades in opposition, fighting for justice and reform. Despite 5 unsuccessful bids for the presidency, his resilience and strategic alliances earned him the nickname Agwambo, the mysterious one.
Raila has been a very key factor. We want to say that we were very sad about his demise, and what we can say for now, we are so much heartbroken about his death.
Raila Odinga, I remember him as a man who has no any fear. Number two, he's a man who has brought in multipartyism through democracy and the new constitution 2010.
His ability to reconcile with former adversaries, including current President William Ruto, who paid his respects, highlighted a legacy of unity in the Kenyan politics. Meanwhile, the morning took tragic turn as police fired gunshots and tear gas into the crowd gathered at the stadium, where mourners had come to pay their final respects. Reports confirm that at least 4 lives were lost in the chaos, though it remains unclear whether live ammunition or rubber bullets were used. A 7-day period of mourning has been declared nationwide. Odinga served as Kenyan Prime Minister in 2008. Today, Kenya mourns a leader who has left a legacy of unity and unwavering commitment to the nation he served with dignity. In Johannesburg, for News Central, Bongani, Siziba.
Meantime, Kenya held a state funeral for long-time opposition leader Raila Odinga on Friday in Nairobi following his death from a suspected heart attack in India at age 18. Odinga, known widely as Baba, was central to Kenya's return to multi-party democracy and the 2010 constitution, despite never securing the presidency after 5 attempts. President William Ruto and regional leaders, including Somalia's president, attended Friday's service at Nyayo Stadium. Odinga's body will be transported to Western Kenya for a private burial on Sunday, with large public gatherings expected along the way. And to discuss this, we're joined by political analyst Ndongmo. Thank you so much for joining us. How are Kenyans expressing their feelings and sentiments following the passing of Raila Odinga? We can see the mammoth crowd that went to welcome him, that, they had to transfer the ceremony from the airport, to the stadium. That gives a feel of it, but how are they truly feeling?
Yeah, thank you for having me. Yes, it's been a period of mourning for Kenya at large. Raila Odinga was, I heard you say that he was central to multipartyism, but he was actually central to politics in Kenya for the last 3 or so decades. This is a man who was involved in everything from the constitution making, involved in, as you said, multi-party. And so Kenyans at this point in time are mourning, as much as he was also a polarizing figure in terms of elections. And, it was either you were either for or against Baba, but he was part and parcel of the Kenyan political scene for the last 30 years. So at this point, Kenyans are mourning and reflecting on his life.
So in your view, what impact will you say that his death has had on the opposition movement, and what impact will it have on the movement and the political dynamics in Kenya?
I will say that for this is a game changer. It's going to change drastically Kenyan politics. Raila Odinga, just to give you context about Kenyan politics, is that our politics can be very, very tribal. But Raila Odinga managed to cut a bit through that tribalism. He had support from the Nyanza region, he had support from Western, he had support from the coast. It is very unlikely that we will see one individual come up to take that space or fill that void that Raila Odinga had. So it is going to, for his successor, it is going to be very, very different. I would compare this to when his father died, Jaramogi Oginga Odinga was the head of then Ford Kenya Party. When he passed away, Ford Kenya Party split into 2. Raila went with NDP, the former Vice President Kijana Wamalwa went with Ford Kenya as it was then, as it is still now. But the party is still shrunk. I am assuming ODM, and again, this is just my analysis, I don't believe that ODM will still be the strong party that it is today. Change very, very drastically. And this, you have to also remember that we are about to go, we are 2 years away from the elections. So, yeah, it's going to change drastically.
All right. Also, before we let you go, do you see any emerging leaders or figures who might step into Raila's role as a voice for the opposition and the masses that would have this much impact on the people?
That much impact, I don't think that we will see someone similar, though we do have some young people who seem like they're getting some traction. We have in Nairobi someone called Babu Wino. You might like him or hate him, but he's getting some traction. You have someone called Edwin Sifuna, who is the Secretary General of Raila Odinga's party, ODM. There's some young people who are coming up. They'll get the same traction. That is, it's remaining to see, because we're waiting to see, because, as I said, to fill the void that Raila Odinga left will be a very, very difficult task.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your thoughts on this.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we're going to a short break. It's still the 12 report, and when we come back, more stories. Do stay with us. Let's talk business now. Army Colonel Michael Rajoelina has been sworn in as Madagascar's new president just days after a military power grab that sent President Andry Rajoelina fleeing. Rajoelina, who led the captured army unit that mutinied and joined anti-government protesters at the weekend, read out the presidential oath at a ceremony at the country's top court in the capital, Antananarivo. The ceremony was attended by military officers, political leaders, youth protest representatives, and international delegations. Rajoelina pledged to work with all national forces to draft a new constitution and reform election laws. His focus now is on deeply reforming Madagascar's political, administrative, and socio-economic systems to build a new future for the country.
On va prendre le pouvoir à partir d'aujourd'hui et on dissout à partir d'aujourd'hui le Sénat, le HCC, la HCC, la HCJ et la HCDDED et la CENI. Coup d'État, moi je pense pas. Moi je pense pas qu'il y avait coup d'État. Moi j'ai répondu à chaque fois aux journalistes étrangers que l'armée vient de montrer au peuple malagasy que l'armée existe.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is set to meet U.S. President Donald Trump at the White House this Friday to push for advanced Tomahawk missiles to strengthen Ukraine's defense. This meeting follows Trump's very productive phone call with Russian President Vladimir Putin, during which they agreed to hold face-to-face talks in Budapest, Hungary, in the next 2 weeks. Trump's administration is preparing high-level negotiations with Russia, led by Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Meanwhile, Hungary positions itself as the host for this critical peace summit amid ongoing regional tensions.
About it a little bit, didn't say much, but I do say to you, you know, we need Tomahawks for the United States of America, too. We have a lot of them, but we need them. I mean, we can't deplete for our country. So, you know, they're very vital, they're very powerful, they're very accurate, they're very good, but we need them too. So I don't know what we can do about that.
You're calling President Putin today, and you spoke about meeting in Hungary with him. Do you have a timeline or a date set for when?
Yeah, I would say within 2 weeks or so, pretty quick. Marco Rubio is going to be meeting with his counterpart, as you know, Lavrov, and they'll be meeting pretty soon. They're going to set up a time and a place very shortly. Maybe it's already set up. They've already spoken.
Nigeria has once again been left out of the IMF's list of Africa's fastest growing economies. For many people, it feels like a slap, especially when we hear that our group forecast was even revised upward to almost 4%. But here's the thing, growth on paper is not exactly the same as growth in real life. The IMF is basically saying that yes, Nigeria is moving, but not fast enough, and not in a way that touches the average people. It's interesting because, you see, people have talked about it time and time again, about how the growth that we say is not necessarily reflecting in the lives of the everyday Nigerians. So if this growth does not reflect in the pockets of the market women, if inflation keeps swallowing salaries, if food prices jump every other day, if power supply and fuel costs drag businesses down every other day, then that so-called growth doesn't look like growth to ordinary Nigerians. It's just on paper. Meanwhile, smaller countries like Rwanda, Benin, and Cote d'Ivoire are climbing the list not because they're bigger or richer, but because their reforms are visible, the policies are biting, and their growth feels more solid. That's not to say that we're comparing ourselves with other countries, but what the IMF exclusion is telling us is simple. Size is not everything. Nigeria cannot just rely on its population or oil wealth to stay relevant. And until we fix the revenue, until we fix the power, we fix the jobs and infrastructure, we'll keep hearing that others are sprinting ahead while we're jogging in place or just growing on paper. For Nigerians, it's another reminder that reforms must go beyond the press statements released in Abuja every other day and actually start working for the man and the woman in the market. And that's your postscript.